Bonjour à tous. Merci beaucoup. Ça me fait vraiment très plaisir d'être avec vous aujourd'hui. Donc on commence avec un peu de retard, mais c'est pas très grave. Moi, je vais adapter le contenu au temps qu'on a. Je me tiens un peu moins qu'une heure, il n'y a pas de problème. Et donc, comme Hubert vous l'a dit, c'est streamé parce que l'idée, c'est de faire des ponts avec l'international. L'international, c'est ma spécialité depuis 15 ans. Et donc, l'idée, c'est de pouvoir vous donner des opportunités pour faire des stages à l'étranger et qu'il y ait des étudiants non francophones qui puissent venir peut-être être étudiants à l'école, qui est quand même une exception mondiale. Et vous avez beaucoup de chance d'être étudiant à l'école. Voilà. So, we're going to switch into English this morning. Yeah? And I hope you're happy speaking English this morning. Great. All right. Excellent. So, what we're going to talk about this morning. So, my name is Matt Renier, and I'm the founder and CEO of PLENI International. So, it's a company that is mainly serving international events, so non-French speakers coming to France, and accompany French speakers going into international event abroad. So what we're going to talk about this morning, we're going to have 4 very quick topics. So a quick presentation about our activity, international market and mindset. So where does France play on the international stage as of today? And what really concerns us today is the international event abroad, so French client overseas, and how to serve an international client coming to France. So a very quick presentation about myself today. So I've been expat 3 times in the USA, in Qatar, and in the United Arab Emirates between Dubai and Abu Dhabi. So I spent 7 years outside of France. And I've always loved being at international stage with international client, and I've worked in venues, agencies, and provider. So always with those experience with the international common factor, and forgive me about that, technical background, IEV background, IT background, so forgive me if I talk too much about staging jobs, but it's basically my background. So basically, the whole story started when a British client came to me one day and said, all right, Matt, we're going to do this production together, but I want the whole crew to speak a perfect English. And I was like, wow, well, that's going to be some sort of a challenge, right? And back then in 2004, it was super difficult to find technicians who were good at technical and good at English at the same time. So it was like, wow, that's going to be very hard. Since then, 14 years later, I think we've improved a little bit, but we've got much more to improve again. So it was kind of a challenge, and basically we did it, but I found myself like, we got to do something about that. We got to improve our level in France serving international events. And that was the starting point, basically. So I serve clients like Unilever, Nestle, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, I mean, you name it, those American companies, Bank of America, the French presidency with Sarkozy that you probably know, the COP18 in Qatar, in Dubai, and the COP21 3 years later in France, the launch of the Dubai tram in Dubai, and some clients like sporting companies and sport events quite recently. So now going into our first topic, which is basically the international market and mindset as of today, we're going to start by very, very quick figures and very important fact. So first one being the private tourism. So if we look at private tourism, I found some quite interesting articles about, okay, Paris is basically, those numbers are dated of 2017, the 3rd most visited city around the world. It's huge. It really is huge. France is the most visited country around the world. And this is dated of 2017. This is absolutely enormous. It just tells us that the volume of business is absolutely tremendous in France. So this is, of course, private tourism. But when we look at business tourism, which is something that concerns us more, when you look at the ICA number, and ICA, you probably know ICA already, stands for International Congress and Convention Association, and they give some reports every year. So you look at France is rated at country number 6, hosting more than 500 international association meetings, which is absolutely huge. And Paris, the city, is ranked number 2, along with Vienna, Austria, with 190 international association meetings, just behind Barcelona. Again, what does that tell us? We've got a huge volume of business, a huge one. Country number 6, city number 2. That means that we have more and more international events. So that is something that we need to consider today, and not like is a something new, something different. It's got to be treated as a normal and regular event. Now, where does France play within the international stage? When we look at the number of the CAC 40 largest company in France, basically, when you look at those numbers, 57% of their turnover is made in Europe, including France, 15% in the United States, all those are average number, 23% in the emerging country, and 5% in the rest of the world. Looking at those numbers, you're like, okay, so what is the part of France business for those French company? Pretty small, pretty small. And another interesting topic is between 2009 and 2011, so just after the crisis of 2008, 85% of the increase of the turnover came from abroad, came from the international. So once again, a relay of a super increase coming from the international. So with this particular topic here, if we look at the number of the CAC 40 company, these are basically the percentage of how much money they make outside of France. And this is absolutely huge. So this is coming from stock 600 with the 600 largest company in Europe. But basically you look at some company like L'Oréal or LVMH making 90% of the turnover with money that is not coming from France, right? So Sanofi, Saint-Gobain, I mean, you name it, Air France, where all those key accounts that you guys will follow and that you're going to work with in future, could you be on the client side? Could you be on the agency side, provider side, or venue side? It doesn't matter. You will work with them. But knowing that they're making more money outside of France than in France, it means that sooner or later, if you work with them, you will have to face some international challenges. Starting with, you can have an expat as a meeting planner, but he's not a French speaker, but he works for a French company. Starting with a meeting coming from all over Europe, or even outside of Europe. So basically, those figures are just telling us one important topic, which is in future, we're going to have more and more international events. So now looking at the different relay that we can have in the market, so coming back into what concerns today with the market with international, so we said 90% of some companies making money outside of France, talking about probably something that you've already heard of, think global and act local, right? The global, think global, act local, meaning that you've got worldwide company, you've got company who are doing business around the world, but they've got to customize and they've got to personalize their communication in each country, opening doors to roadshow, opening doors to touring. So you got to sell a pair of shoes. Basically, you're not going to sell it the same way in Italy. You're not going to sell it the same way in France or in Germany or in the Netherlands. So basically, sooner or later, again, you may have to work with the same event in different countries. Again, we're talking about international event. And Europe, and you probably know that, has become like one large country as of today, with the low cost, with the fact that we're using euro, with the fact that everywhere people speak English. The regional aspect of France is now what's happening in Europe. Like, you've got some region in the north or in the south of France, and you would have also some region of the north or the south of Europe. But in the end, we've got many, many common points, right? So basically, just to finish about that, France is a super attractive country. So it's got the second European birth rate just after Ireland. And this is a super important key figure because a country that is having fertility going up means that for a business or economy point of view, you've got some long-term strategy there. A country that is getting a birth rate going down means that what's going to happen in 10 or 20 or 30 years, Who knows? But a country that's having a very high fertility rate means that you've got to invest in this country. And this is pretty true because France is also the 7th country around the world for international income and investment. We tend to forget about that. 7th country around the world, which means that many, many countries are happy invest in France because of what? Stability, sustainability, politically it's pretty stable. So again, they think France has got a super interesting future. And now talking about international event, we had the Ryder Cup. We're going to have the FIFA Women's World Cup next year in June. You know about it. Rugby World Cup 2023. And the Olympics 2024. We've never had that. We've never had that. Like 5, 6, 7 very interesting international event, worldwide event in a row like that. It's absolutely huge. So what do you think the international company or even French company think about it? There is a future. There is the whole world coming to our country, right? So now, just to finish about that and about mindset, if you guys are interested in international event, you've got to develop a certain mindset to stick with this international market. What is it? You got to be part of this big club where tolerance, open mind, and I would say, yeah, pretty open and no comfort zone, right? Where basically you can work with any sort of client and any sort of attendees, because sometimes you've got different nationality between the meeting planner and the attendants. Also, you've got to develop a very strong English. We talked about it previously today with my technicians who were either good at technical, good in English, but rarely good at both, right? So you've got to develop your English. You need to watch series, no subtitles. Do you do that? Do you watch series with no subtitles? Excellent. You need to watch movies. You do that. Great. You need to read in English. Do you read in English? Great. Do you watch TV in English? Excellent. Then it means that you guys will perform. I'm telling you that. You need to be very good at your English, because otherwise, just talking about Paris 2024, you'll have around 30% of French decision makers and probably up to 70% of non-French decision makers. If you want to catch this part of cake, you've got to speak a super good English. In 6 years from now, what age will you be? Probably a good age for tackling some sort of event. So keep that in mind. Now, just finishing about English, my sister is a teacher, and you know the French education, and we grown up with that, was like most of the time, you got to speak properly. You got to avoid making any mistake. If you do a mistake, then don't say anything. While I'm telling you the right opposite to that. Make mistake. Do mistakes. Unleash your English. Free up your English. You got to voice your English, because better speaking with someone and making mistakes, connect with someone and making mistakes, than not saying anything. Like you keep it for yourself and, oh, I'm not going to speak properly, so I prefer to not say anything. If you start not saying anything, you do not connect and you do not improve your English. So be very honest with you. I travel everywhere around the world and mainly in Europe. I would say that in the rest of Europe, they're not better than us in English. It's just that they're not afraid of making mistake. That really is what I think. So make mistake. So Europe is a village. You see Europe as a village. We've already said that. You think international. You're neutral. You got no judgment. You've got no comfort zone. You're all set. And the final point would be, why do we see an international event something different than a French client in France? That is pretty weird. The British, you look at UK, they would serve an international client in the UK the same way they would serve a British client in the UK. Why that? Just because, okay, they speak English, it's their maternal language, all right, fair enough. But there is no justification for treating an event abroad a different way than event at home. So let's make it an event that is 4,000 kilometers away as easy as an event that is 40 kilometers away. That's basically the goal we try to reach. So also, if you want to go a bit further with that, you'll have some interesting way to look at network overseas. We talked about ICA. You already know ICA. We talked about agencies that got their own network around the world. Obviously, like Havas or Publicis, the very large French companies, the BEA world that is happening at the moment in Portugal, Havent that is coming in a few days right here, AV Alliance, for example, with the technical providers, or MPI, which, by the way, I'm a member of, Meeting Professional International, the Event Manager blog. Are you familiar with the Event Manager blog? It's an American, very interesting individual who's every day or every week giving some sort of a quick blog of what's going on the event industry worldwide. Don't only look at what's happening in France, but look at what's happening everywhere. This is how you're going to be able to serve an international client saying, oh, you're not aware about this, you're not aware about that. If you're curious, if you look at what's going on in the other countries, you'll be in a much better position. Now, we get into what really concerns us today and an international event abroad. And I'm just going to take a sip of water because I'm speaking a lot. And that is something very important. You got to hydrate yourself, especially when you work in the Middle East where it's very hot. And I'm pretty sure you know about that. Also, I would say in event when you walk and run the whole day, hydrate yourself. Sometimes we do 10, 20, 30 kilometers in one day. It's just absolutely crazy. Hydrate yourself. Have food. When you do production, have food and water in advance. You got to make it happening. We're not machines, right? So we're human and we need the fuel, right? To make the machine work. All right. So how to set up an event for a French client overseas. I'm very happy and pleased to do that almost on a daily basis. I just love that. It is difficult, but it's super interesting. You need to know the country you're going into, like why your client has chosen this country. Example, your client is putting together an event in Athens, in Greece. All right, great. Why has he chosen Greece? You need to know that. You need to know Greece in detail, like, for example, the use and habits, but you need to go over and beyond the event point of view of the country, like what's going on economically, what's going on politically, what is going on as a tourism point of view. So the better you know the country, the better you serve. You need to know the real motivation of your client, saying, okay, I've chosen Athens, but has he chosen or has she chosen Athens for boat riding and the sun and the good food and everything? Or is it because this company has opened a new bureau in Athens in Greece? Both motivations are pretty good, but they are very different from one to another. Like, what really concerns your client is the fun and it's a reward to the guys at the company. Another one will be more business oriented. So obviously the allocation of the budget is going to be completely different from one to another. You also need to have a good understanding about legal, health and safety, payments. All these topics are super important. Most of the time you get into a country and once you get there, oh, I found out about this. Oh, I found out about that. Prevent rather than cure. Be curious. What's going on in this country? I'm going to take one example. You go to Germany, when we say payment plan, 33%, when comes the second 33%, you better pay. If you do not pay, you're going to have serious trouble. In France, when we say 50-50, sometimes the first 50% comes and the second one, you got very long delay to get paid. So payment plan, health and safety, what are the habits of this country? So the better you know, the better you serve again. You need to prevent rather than cure. Another very important point, you're going to have some local contacts. Could be DMC, could be venue, could be freelancers, you name it. You'll have some local contacts. Local contacts. For such a long time, we were scared of calling, having conversation with them. Why that? I don't really speak a good English. I'm afraid to speak English. They don't really speak a good English to me. So I put everything in writing. Put everything in writing. I keep my comfort zone. I better write than talk. All right, fine. But you've got WhatsApp, you've got the Viber, you've got the Skype, you've got billions of opportunity today. It's very easy. It's free. Unleash your English. Talk. Make it the same way you produce an event in France. Why do we call when it's a French event and we suddenly stop calling when it's an international event? I don't really understand what he says, right? So you got to stop that. You got to call and even call more than what you would call in France. Make the person that is on the other side your friend. You got to call him every 5 minutes if you want. And then once the confidence is in, you're going to see that it's far easier. So you got to avoid the lost in translation syndrome. The lost in translation syndrome is basically you say something and you think it is obvious. I said, I'd like some fruit salad. All right, so what do we hear and what do we understand by fruit salad? Okay, we got a little plate with little different colors, different fruits. It's a fruit salad. But the person on the other side of the line has maybe understood completely different thing. Like, could be like, I don't know, like an apple cut in different pieces. Like, oh yeah, this is what I call a fruit salad. But you're expecting different colors, different kind of fruits or seasonal fruits. And suddenly you're like, wow, I've ordered 2,000 of those. And what you get delivered is 2,000 of apple cut in pieces. Go and talk to your client. Well, that's not what I want. This is not what I want, right? So I've ordered a fruit salad, not apple cut it in pieces. What do we do with that? This is a lost in translation syndrome. This happens quite regularly because if you talk about, okay, it's X number of euro times 2,000 attendees, go and talk to your client. Going to you and say, you know what? I don't pay for that. This is not what I ordered. I don't pay for that. You're going to go and see your caterer and see, okay, we're not going to pay for it because no more what we ordered. You've signed a contract. So you did order it. So make it as it is not the lost in translation syndrome. And for that, there's a quick movie I'd like to share with you. Do you guys know the movie Philadelphia? Does it ring a bell? 1993. Okay, Tom Hanks, Denzel Washington. Yeah, all right. Let's watch it.
Concealing your illness. That's correct. All right, explain this to me like I'm a 2-year-old, okay? Because there's an element to this thing I just cannot get through my thick head. Didn't you have an obligation to tell your employer you had this dreaded, deadly, infectious disease?
That's not the point.
That's not the point. Right? You got it? You got everything? Maybe not. Let's watch it again.
Concealing your illness. That's correct. All right, explain this to me like I'm a 2-year-old, okay? Because there's an element to this thing I just cannot get through my thick head. Didn't you have an obligation to tell your employer you had this dreaded, deadly, infectious disease?
That's not the point.
Okay. So why I wanted to share that with you is actually that's not the point. What is important is explain this to me like I'm a 2-year-old. This is absolutely amazing. This phrase is the most important thing that I can share with you today. Explain this to me like I am a 2-year-old. As simple as that. What does that mean? It means that he's struggling to understand what Tom Hanks is sharing with him. It's like he's missing some pieces. They're American. They speak the same language. They don't understand each other. It's exactly the same thing. Explain this to me like I am a 2-year-old. That doesn't mean that you lack respect to the person you're talking to, but you've got to repeat, and repeat again, and find other way to say the same thing. Be as clear as possible, mention what really counts to you, because if you consider that what you said is obvious, then forget about it. Nothing is obvious at the international stage. I can tell you it's not obvious from French to French, So it certainly is not obvious from French to different nationality. So you've got to voice yourself and make it clear. So now moving forward to putting together your production. Okay, so you're getting there. You're doing your event abroad. I would say that there is no good or bad method of producing your event abroad. You would say that basically you can either send some equipment, could be technical equipment, AV, could be branding, could be personnel, of course, abroad, or you can also source locally. Both exist. And about that, I'll be very clear with you. My preference would go obviously to sourcing locally because you reduce the carbon footprint and you play with sustainability, of course, but there is no good or bad method. Just to investigate about the negative and the positive of each of them, if you do source with shipping your equipment, you know your provider, you're going to be in your comfort zone, you're going to speak French, not a problem. You're going to probably use a provider that you've already worked with. Great. You've got your habits, comfort zone, easy. Minus, you're not going to protect the planet. You're not going to play with sustainability. And more than that, you're not going to help your client to have a positive report with sustainability, where more and more of those companies got to show their reports, especially the ones that we've seen before on the stock exchange. They got public reports of how much they score, how high is the performance with sustainability, right? So, final point, you're not going to grow the local economy. Going back to our Athens example, you go to Greece, if you bring all of your crew, all of your equipment, then basically if this client is having a new bureau in Athens, first thing this local partner of your client will see is like, okay, so you come with your own team, you come with your own equipment. And basically it's like, is that how you'd like to share with me? Somehow you need to show your local partners that you give a piece of the cake, that you share the business, and that you use and grow local economy as well. Now, about the crew, it would be exactly the same thing. You can bring your own crew and you can have local crew as well. But basically the difference would be that the local crew would probably know the habits of local. They speak the language, they'll know the venue. And on your side, if you bring your own crew, great. You've got your own comfort zone, you speak the language, but probably this person will struggle because just like you, doesn't know the little things, the little detail that make the things different and certainly more comfortable. And then sourcing locally, you're going to lower the carbon footprint for sure. And you're going to pass probably through the talk to me like I'm a 2-year-old that we've just seen before. But you got to be careful with, is it matching your expectation? Is it matching your standards? Why? Because sometimes when you go abroad, you think, oh, great. Pricing wise, it's lower than what I have in France. So it's great. All right, everybody's happy with that. But when you get there, the level of equipment, the reference that you use is different, and basically the execution can be different. So in order to avoid and tackle this kind of frustration you may have, you need to talk and be very honest with your client. Are you after pricing? Are you after execution? What is important to you? And basically your client's going to say, well, I'd like to gain on both, right? I pay low and I score high. That's not going to happen. That is not going to happen. So you've got to be very clear and honest with your client. If he's going for economy and sourcing locally, absolutely fine. You source locally, so you're going to pay probably a lower rate. But execution, you've got to adapt yourself. You've got to be tolerant, and you've got to accept that probably the level of equipment or the reference can be different than what you're used to, or the execution can be a bit different than what you're used to. So now basically, the final point would be how mature your client is. Is he used to go abroad quite often? So he's like not surprised by the execution that it's going to have locally? Or is he like not going that often to international destination, and then suddenly you've got to educate your client a little bit. You've got to be to him and say, right, we've got to be careful because this is what we're going to get locally. This is the health and safety measure and everything. If your client say, okay, the planning is super important, you've got to respect the planning in detail. Then suddenly if you get in a different place where people can come a bit later and it's not as clear and as precise as the planning of your client, tell your client. All right, you've got a super quotation. Okay, it's less expensive, great. But you've got to accept this kind of thing. And if the client says, I want both, then you know what? Do not source locally. Bring your own crew, because you know that you're not going to be able to match what the client is asking for and pricing. This is asking too much. Basically, just to share with you some sort of frustration that you have at international level, basically we had recently an exhibition in Germany. So you say Germany, it's just the country that is really nearby to us, right? You go into Germany and you have, like, for example, a drawing showing an exhibition, just like here in Port de Versailles. And, pardon me 1 second, important to hydrate. You've got a drawing, like the one you have here in Port de Versailles. And I was with a technician saying, okay, I got to do HF camera transportation of signal from one place to another, right? And he was calculating from one booth to another the distance, saying, oh, okay, it's like 20 meter, okay, so it's going to be all right. Problem, there was a wall in between, but he was not able to see that there was a wall in between. Why? Simply because he checked the drawing he got, he checked probably Google Map, and Google Map, it didn't have the proper information. Oh, gonna put that away, and that's it. And stop there and saying, okay, everyone is in the same hole. Problem, as a commercial point of view, the organizer put all the booths all together, not showing that they were spread in different holes. So he didn't know about the wall in between. So if you do not take your phone again to call the organizer and say, okay, I've got to do this. Is it possible? Can we do that? Can you send me a picture? If you do not go above and beyond, a bit further than just stopping yourself to the drawing, the way you prepare your French event that you know, in the venue you know, here in Port de Versailles, probably you're going to hit a brick wall. So go further and beyond, exit your comfort zone, and you got to make sure by a second backup, a third backup, a fourth backup to make sure that what you tell your client, yes, okay, it's going to work, it's really going to work. Another one with cables, talking about cables. I've been in some places where basically you've got the cables and it's like nothing is hidden, right? So you've got the cables all the way. And you're like, wow, what we expect, I mean, just like here with gaffer tape, is that the cable is almost clean and along the wall and everything. But in some places, it's going to be like, yeah, but it works. It does work. Simply because in their culture, it's like, my job is to make it work. My job is not to make it clean, neat and tidy. So if we expect that, if it's our level of expectation, voice it, make it clear, send pictures. This is what I want. I want that with cables along the way. I want the gaffer tape. I want it clean. This is my level of expectation. Now, if the planning doesn't take that in consideration, add some hours, but make sure that, again, what you want is going to be delivered in the end. Planning, we talked about it, health and safety measures, same thing. You come with your PPE, personal protection equipment. You've got your safety shoes, you've got your helmet, you've got a harness and everything. This is the standard here in Port de Versailles. Suddenly you go into another exhibition hall and no one does wear it. You're like, wow, this is kind of shocking. But in reality, you're going to fight, you're going to struggle with the local technician and say, okay, I want you to wear that because my client, in its chart, you've got to do it. Again, ask and get the information to know, okay, what is the local custom and habits? What do they do over there to make sure that you're not going to hit a brick wall and tell your client, be careful, it's not going to be like that locally. In case, you bring your own technicians. If you got to respect the chart, bring your own technicians. Extra hour warning, that was kind of an interesting one. I got one day a quotation with like 3 technicians for the 17th, 18th, and 19th. Right? 3 technicians, 3 days, easy. Off you go, 9 shift. Wow. On the day, you got a call time at 8 o'clock in the morning, and suddenly by 6 or 7 in the evening, the day is over. But suddenly if you run outside and you go into extra hours, suddenly it's like, oh, I'm going to charge you some extra hours. But you got no advance notice. You got no one coming to you and say, oh, be careful, I'm going to charge you extra hours. You got to get the information. You got to check what is the local habit in this country. In this country, do they charge extra hours? After 8 hours, after 10 hours, after 12 hours? Ask the question. If it's not mentioned on your quote, go prevent rather than cure. Ask the question. If you do not do it, then suddenly the client's going to say, well, this is how it works here. Yeah, but it was not mentioned on my quotation. Who's right? Who's wrong? Difficult, right? So avoid frustration. This is the whole topic of what we're doing today. Again, now if we talk about welcoming an international client in France, and we're going to finish with that. That's going to be my last sip, I think. And it's like 9:50, so we are on time. Good thing. Serving an international client in France, again, just like what you did to check about the country of where your client is going into, for example, Greece, check who's coming to you. Quick example, you got a Swiss client. You got to make sure that you're going to respect timing, because the first thing the Swiss do, it's the watch country, right? They're pretty square with timing. If you say 8 o'clock, it's got to be 7:50, I'm telling you. So at 8 o'clock, you start. It's not like 8:20, people are coming and say, oh, what do we do today? No, it's not going to be like that. So it's a start. But in some culture, it's going to be like it's normal, it's habit. But in some other culture, it's going to be taken as a lack of respect. So meaning that you're starting like in a very bad way, but not due to lack of respect, but seen or interpreted as a lack of respect. So make sure that somehow you fit or you match the level of expectation of your international client. If your currency is different, even with the UK or Swiss, for example, with the Swiss franc or with the pound, make your conversion in the exchange rate. You got to be careful because with high numbers, with the fee that the bank is taking, sometimes you got some surprise. So you've got to make serious calculation and make sure that the money you get in the bank is what you really wanted and not like you're losing some X percentage, because with high number, it can be a big issue. Check the cost of living or the cost of living of your client. A client coming from Czech Republic, a client coming from Norway. Well, basically, coming from Czech Republic, the cost of living is pretty lower compared to France. But a client coming from Norway, the cost of living is higher than France. So you got to adapt yourself a little bit. Meaning by that if you do not tell your client and you're not educating your client and say, in our country, this is pretty high. This is pretty high service. So I'm going to tell you, my pricing is going to be pretty high. You got to educate your client. Otherwise, he might be shocked and say, wow, that's super expensive. Yeah, because in his country, probably the taxes are completely different. Finally, I would say like a bit of self-control. We talked about the lack of respect and everything. Sometimes it's just about interpretation. It's just about the person talks to you and doesn't think that he's lacking respect to you or talking badly to you, but you do interpret it like that. Wow, this person doesn't say hi. This person doesn't say hello. Straight and say, I need this, I want that. And like, wow, the minimum of respect, you tell me hi, you say hello, you say please. In some culture, people don't do that. But does that mean that they lack respect to you? Certainly not. They've grown up, they've been educated in a different culture, different manner. They've got different manner. That doesn't mean that they don't respect you. But most of the time, the mistake we do is like, wow, I'm shocked the way this person is talking to me. And it's like, okay, from now on, you're not my friend anymore. Wrong. This is completely wrong. This is completely wrong because you're going to spend hours, weeks, probably months to prepare your event, to deliver your event to your client. It's the complete opposite. You've got to be friend with this client. You've got to be close to him. And don't think that the person is lacking respect to you. Just take him in consideration that he's been educated a different way. And final thing about nationality, something very important. You can have sometimes a German client coming to you with a German group, German agency, German attendees. Okay, fine. The color of this event is going to be German. Okay, perfectly fine. But what about a Finnish person coming from Finland living in Dubai and bringing a group of Asians. What about that? You've got a meeting planner coming from Finland. This person is living in Dubai and working in Dubai and is bringing some attendees from China, from Japan, and from Vietnam. What about that? You've got to face a certain culture for your meeting planner, the certain surroundings and the way, the habits this person's got, and the attendees that may have a completely different expectation as well. So that becomes something pretty difficult. But always think about the attendees, because the attendees are the final users. So for example, you're having Arabs client coming from the Middle East, you know that they love the AC super cold. They like it at 16, 17 degree. And if you leave it at 23, 24, they're going to come to you like sweating like crazy and say, please bring me the AC, bring me the AC. And you're going to say, yeah, but the AC is on already. Wow, that is an issue. So you got to tackle that and say, okay, venue, are you capable, because I'm having Arabic clients used to super cold AC, are you capable of providing super cold AC? You're not? Okay, tell your client. Or have a provider coming for a different AC to make sure that your client's going to be comfortable. If he's got to spend 3 days in this venue, that's going to be hell, I'm telling you. So prevent rather than cure. And just to finish with this a final example of frustration for the opposite, like international client coming to you. Just one quick example, a client coming from the Nordics country and saying, okay, I need outdoor monitors. Okay, so monitors where you can get rain, you can get snow, you can get minus 40 degree, plus 50 degree. Okay, so it's a super high monitor with a frame around it that is super heavy and resists any sort of weather, right? He says, okay, this is what I want. And basically, I did send a quote with a reference number, but it was not an outdoor monitor. Simply because we do not have such thing for rental in France. Very few. It's like just few pieces in the whole country. Very few. We're not used to that. But in this country, it's something pretty, I mean, it's easy, something you can find everywhere. So basically I send the reference number thinking that he's going to check what sort of reference number I'm giving to him. And he's going to say, okay, it's not really an outdoor monitor, so I'm happy with that. Or do we cover it with like plastic on it? Are we happy with that? Yes, no? He didn't do it. I didn't do it either. I haven't come to him and say, be careful. It is not a proper outdoor monitor. Are we happy with that? Blah, blah, blah. So he hasn't done 50% of the way. I haven't done the other 50% of the way. Again, who's right, who's wrong? It's not a debate. But we had a frustration. We had an issue. How to solve that? In the end, I told him, if it's really the product you want, you know what? Bring it with you, because it doesn't exist in the country. But he didn't make the research, and I didn't do either. So again, prevent rather than cure. And the very last one that I'm going to share with you today is sometimes you have some clients who do not ask you anything and do not share anything with you. And they think, what I said previously, that what they say is obvious. Very short phrase, 3 words. Okay, woo, this is what I want. But again, you can't understand everything. You ask question, what do you mean by that? Can you tell me more? And you got no explanation. And you're fighting for more explanation, you got no more explanation. Fight again, and at some point, tell him, help me to help you. If you do not help me with your information, I'm not going to help you on the ground. And I'm telling you, one day, I had a client who didn't tell anything, just, I want this, I want that. No word at all in preparation, but on site, suddenly voicing everything. I want this is not what I want that, And I was like, well, suddenly, whoa, he talks. Yeah, he does. But he didn't tell me anything in preparation phase. So you got to harass your client to get information. If you do not, then at some point, prevent rather than cure, send what you're going to do. Okay, I got no information. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. Pictures, link, videos. This is what I'm going to deliver. This is how the staff's going to be dressed. This is what I'm going to do to you. This is what time we're going to be ready. Tell everything in advance to your client. So it's not going to say, I was not aware of what you're going to do to me. Again, prevent rather than cure. And that's it for me. Thank you very much. We are on time. It's 10 o'clock. So I don't know if you have any question, but probably the question are for downstairs in the TTT that we have in the coming minutes. So we're going to keep the questions for downstairs, I think. Thank you very much. And I hope I was not like making you like sleeping too much this morning. I'm sorry if I did. Okay, thank you.